Okay, what I've got here is from the Iwata Studio series of compressors. It's the Sprint Jet air compressor, model IS800. It's an 8th horsepower oilless piston compressor, and it's designed for fingernail painting, hobbies, fine art, sign making, just general airbrushing. Nothing too big because it's constantly running, but it would make an ideal initial choice for a compressor, or just something that for smaller projects. Okay, to begin with, I must admit it looks a little bit intimidating when you first open the box. You obviously get the compressor, you get a cooling hose. I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. The actual airbrush hose. You get an air filter with a gauge on it. You also get a couple of bags that have got various fittings for Aztec, Pache and Badger airbrushes, and you get a filter and a spare O-ring there that are actually accessories for the filter itself when they clog up or if you get the O-ring damaged. You also get obviously an instruction leaflet there explaining how to set everything up, and a parts list. You also get for your airbrush, you get an air regulator and a quick release connector. So basically you're covered for everything. If you want to start airbrushing, this is ideal. Well, as I said, once you get everything out of the box, there seems to be all sorts of hoses and connectors, but it's quite self-explanatory really. If you just read the instructions, it'll take you through anyway, but there's not really any way you can get this wrong. First of all, you've got the coiled hose, which they're calling the cooling hose. The idea of this is to cool the air before it reaches the filter. So basically you screw that into position on the compressor. All the fittings have O-rings, so only filter tight, finger tight rather. Now this end, the other end of the hose, screws onto the filter itself. Okay. Now this filter simply drops into the holder on the front of the compressor. Now what I've noticed when that's fine actually, that's great, but what I've noticed when it's running, it tends to rattle because the whole compressor does vibrate slightly. It's on rubber feet and it's quiet, but this adds to the noise. So there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't simply remove the bracket, take these two screws out, put the screws back in after you've removed the bracket, and you could actually attach this to a workbench or something. So you're keeping the rattly filter out the way of this. That's the only noise issue really that I can see. But when we've got this going, I'll switch it on. Right, so filter's designed to go in there. The straight air hose has got a large fitting and the airbrush fitting. Obviously the large fitting goes onto the larger fitting of the filter. So there you have it. Basically you're set up with all your hoses. Your airbrush goes on the end of the straight pipe. I won't bother using the quick connect fitting out the bag. Might as well just show you this for a start. So there we have it set up, and we're basically ready to go. Before I turn this on, I'll just show you how you actually regulate the air pressure on the airbrush. It's by this. The idea of this is it bleeds air through so that it vents a certain amount off instead of going through the airbrush. That's how it regulates the air pressure. You can easily see what pressure you're getting in the gauge here. When you do set the air pressure, you should actually be pressing down for air and then adjust it accordingly. Otherwise, when you take your finger off the airbrush, the pressure does build up there and it'll give you a false reading. So always regulate your air pressure when you're actually pressing on for air at the airbrush end. Okay, to begin with, I'll just turn the compressor on without anything attached. You can listen to the kind of noise levels we're talking about without anything rattling around. So I'll just turn this on and you can hear it just buzzing away. There's very little vibration, in fact that's hardly anything at all. You can just feel the air pulsing through here. So that's basically it without anything fitted. What I'll do is I'll add the hose to this now. When I switch this on, you will hear air bleeding off through here, through the bottom of the filter. As it builds up, you'll hear it come through. So basically, this is how you regulate the air that's bled through there. Try and get it so you can see the gauge there. So the air's bleeding through the filter, and then what happens is you've got whatever air you're asking to be delivered to your airbrush. It's a very simple method. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop the filter into position. So it just sits in there basically, just like that. Now, when I turn this on, you're going to hear this rattling around a little bit. It's trying to just walk around the bracket a little bit. I mean, you know, that's no problem. You wouldn't have the compressor in front of you anyway while you were working. So, but if that does sort of get on your nerves a little bit, I think you could either put a bit of tape around here, I think, to hold it in place more firmly, or like I said, detach the bracket and put it elsewhere. But as you can see, there's a lot of difference between that and just that. Apart from that, no problem at all. So adjusting the pressure, keep your finger on your airbrush. You can hear it quieten down there already actually, because most of the air is now going through the airbrush instead of through the bleed off valve. Now when you switch the compressor on and you're not using the airbrush, the gauge is probably going to read between 40 and 50 psi, which is perfectly normal. It's just bleeding off air. As soon as you start using your airbrush, that's when you obviously start venting off some of the air through your airbrush itself, and that's when you regulate the pressure. So at that point, when you start using your airbrush, you can then regulate the pressure to whatever you want. It'll work anything between 10 and 35 psi, which is perfectly normal for smaller stuff. I just think as a starter, or even as an airbrush to be used constantly if you're just doing small stuff, I think it's really good. It's very well made. They really have thought of everything. I can't think of anything else actually that you could supply to get anybody going. It's got the adapters, all the fittings, the hoses, regulator. It's just got everything. So I'd recommend it for a first time or a hobby compressor, no problem. Or even for nail art or painting cakes or whatever. I think it's very good.